A very warm welcome to Mishi Choudhary. Thank you for joining us at Bar and Bench. And Mishi Choudhary is a digital rights lawyer and the founder of SFLC, which is a non-profit legal services organization. Thank you so much, Mishi, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So, Mishi, one of the biggest developments that has happened today in the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court has stayed the notification of the central government to form fact-checking units, which it wanted to form to dispel disinfo, fake news,
Mhm,
or misleading information. But the Supreme Court has
mhm,
stated today and also underscored quite significantly that it involves a serious question of freedom of speech and expression. So why do you
mhm.
think the Supreme Court is saying what it is saying in its order today?
I think we have seen at least some reporting about the arguments as they were made out. And those arguments correctly point out that this is a form of proxy censorship where the examiner checks their own paper and awards themselves whatever grade they would like. So the government, by this notification, the executive has a fact checking unit and that is affiliated with the government. About government's business, it becomes the final authority on truth. You are a journalist, and so are many of us in terms of people who keep a check on what comes out and what does not. Our job in a democracy is to ensure that everything is fact checked, or at least we take our information from there. Now, if only the government decides to be the arbiters of truth, then there's singularity of whatever they can decide. It can be yes, it can be no. If they say it's raining, then it's raining. If they say no, it's not. But as many people have pointed out, our job is to look outside and see if it is falling, water is falling from the sky or not. Now, in this notification, the fact checking unit is affiliated with the executive, so everybody obviously raises the question about its independence. And it also says that if the fact checking unit, this is the April 6th notification also, if they say something needs to be taken down, then it must be taken down. And none of the platform companies, whether it is Facebook or Twitter or anybody, we don't expect them as profit enterprises to say, no, we will not take down, because
Right.
there's a threat on their, a sword of Damocles also hanging on their heads about if they don't do it, then what's going to happen. That's why I believe the Supreme Court recognized the fact that we cannot have a government affiliated entity to tell us whether the business of the government is true or not. B, there are other various implications that this raises about free speech, about who gets to say what. And C, this is election season. All around the world, the largest swath of humanity ever will go to vote. Everybody's concerned about misinformation and disinformation, especially related to elections. And it is an established fact that political parties are the biggest perpetrators of misinformation and disinformation. So I think all those three considerations led the Supreme Court to realize that as important as fact checking as a job is, something which is affiliated with the government may not be the right way to do it.
Okay. And the Supreme Court also points out that the matter was pending, adjudication in the Bombay High Court. Do you think
Yes.
the government could have waited for a final decision on the issue and then perhaps, taken it forward uh, through notification?
So, yeah, what had happened was that, as you know, that in January there was a split decision, and then the matter was referred to a third judge,
Right,
and who refused to actually stay what was asked about this notification of FCU. And once that is done, then obviously the case, government is free to do it. And they
right.
can cite, obviously, to say, you know what, elections are coming, we need to do such a thing. And legally, there was nothing which was preventing them to do that. The matter is not yet heard on merits, which is a problem. I think it's always a problem because our courts take too long to hear matters, and then facts change on the ground. Now, if elections happen already, we would have seen that many of the issues which have been raised by several parties, including SFLC.in, which has filed cases in the Supreme Court as well as other high courts, on these IT rules have been pending now for over months, actually over a year or so. And we have no way to understand how this is going to work. We are already seeing a lot of requests for content takedown. Even when peaceful protests happen, a lot of handles of the people who are calling for protest, they are blocked. So there's obviously an issue about how the IT rules are now being abused to shape the narrative. So to answer that first question, they have no legal impediment for the notification, and they have several reasons to go ahead with this.
Okay.
So I don't see how they would have waited, other than through a Supreme Court stay order, which has now come.
Okay. And there are already fact-checking units or, misleading news, units that fact-check, that expel disinfo in place. So, what is the impact that they can face if there is a FCU, a fact-checking unit of the government in place? How can that impact the existing fact-checking units which are non-aligned with the government?
Um, that's a great question. I think um, uh, at least the FCU by PIB will be the only one which has actually been notified in a gazette notification in the rules which are formulated by the government. So the government is already saying whatever comes out of this fact checking unit, that is going to hold superiority over everything else. And that obviously tells everybody to say this is more legitimate than the others. And that at least casts a shadow of doubt on anyone else who comes up with the whatsoever is the result of their fact checking. So that happens as the first thing. The second thing I would say is that it also gives a reason for people to be able, who are right now in the government. It could be this party, it could be another party, it doesn't matter. Every 5 years we have elections and parties can come and go. But then what it becomes is that there's singularity which is decided by the government. That's not the kind of democracy or an open society anybody lives in, where the government tells you what is right, what is wrong, or what is true, or what is false. These various fact-checking units, they're only recognized. There is an IFCN body all around the world, which has certain code of conduct, and there are certain principles which have to be complied with. Then only they're recognized through that IFCN body. Many of the companies work with that fact-checking units with that have been recognized by that body. And one of the core principles there is non-partisanship. And I think as citizens also, for us, it is very, very crucial that fact checkers should only be doing exactly what's in their name. Check the facts and stop telling us or put a color on it on whatever their own biases are or whatever one party might want. We also see the great thing about India's federalism is that many a times that we can agree with certain things with the federal government, the central government. We may not agree with the same thing at the state level. And vice versa is also true that state governments are doing something fantastic and we don't agree with the central government. But that's the cacophony of democracy, that all of us are able to get information as well as evaluate it and not be told that only one way is the way to look at any set of anything which is coming out. I think many of the fact checkers so far in India have been able to also tell us that how important their work is, how much of that can be traced to the various IT cells all the political parties nowadays run. We can also see whether it is Facebook or WhatsApp or all of these platforms, how much they're flooded with misinformation and disinformation, which is not only about political kind. Right now, politics is important, but it's also about health. Every other day, some influencer comes up and something is going on, which makes claims about liver health or diabetes or other stuff, which can be frankly very dangerous and life threatening. And many of the fact checkers come up with various such things, not all, but of course, elections, politics are our main focus right now, and as it should be, or we are all political citizens after all. But the impact on them would be the attacks on their legitimacy would obviously increase. And everybody would only point out to whatever is coming out of the government. And that seems much more suited to an authoritarian regime rather than a democracy like India.
That note, if I have to ask you, do you see a scope or, in future, of a collaboration perhaps between the fact-checking units of the government and the non-government bodies or, offices who do fact-checking? Can there be a collaboration, or do you think there should be a collaboration and the government should obviously take advantage of the expertise of those who have been doing it for a long time? Uh, is there a scope? Should there be a scope?
That's a great idea, I would say. I do think some teams, when they work collaboratively for the larger good, we can definitely come up with things. There are things which a Boom Live or an Alt News can teach because they have had a lot of experience, and international fact-checking bodies can teach a lot of it. So collaboration is always good. But what is the intent here? Is the intent to actually really do a fact check and make sure that we are checking misinformation or disinformation? Or the intent is only when an opposition political party says something or a person who we don't like says something, we want to only check in the name of fact checking and taking it down. So the intent really matters. And then the final say on these matters then cannot be, oh, yeah, all of you submit something, whatever your assessments are. But ultimately, I am the government. I will only tell you what the right way to do it is. Then, as always, devil is in the details. Um, if that's what a collaboration ends up to be, then it's not really a collaborative thing. And we do not know. And if what we are trying to achieve, that becomes much more important. We already know that despite having so much of fact checking, by the time truth puts on its pants, a lie has traveled all around the world. And it is very hard. People generally see the lie, but rarely do they see the actual fact checked truth post that. So we already are in that era with generative AI. If you see some of these social media posts now, they're flooded with images and everything which has been generated from there. People are not able to tell. There's no labeling, there's no provenance, etc. There's no checking. So we're already in a very, very precarious and dire situation. So recognition that it is a situation which needs addressing is the right thing the government does. However, to do it to say that we are the only people who know anything, I think that is stepping a lot of boundaries of what even the Constitution allows. And that's why the Supreme Court says we are staying this for now. The merits of the matter, the High Court can consider, but there are a lot of issues and there are genuine constitutional issues which have been raised by this. I think for a long time in India, the Métis has used IT rules to expand its censorship and secrecy. There's a black hole. They never tell anybody when somebody's content is taken down. There is no hearing. And each time the companies are threatened with the fact that there will be legal action taken against them. In fact, we have gone so far as to threaten their employees by sending police to some of the employees' homes, that's why they're called hostage taking laws. Now, if you go to a Facebook or Twitter no longer has any teams in India because Mr. Musk decides every day what he wants to do. But when you go to such companies, they are obviously going to plead that the safety of our employees is at stake. So if the government tells us to remove something, we will remove it. So that's why when we talk about these issues, they have to be talked about in terms of limits of constitutionality or what is right for the society. Even constitution is we the people, right? So if it's good for you and me, if you and me can understand, and what we want is that whether it is the X party in power or Y party in opposition. What we want right now is that we get the right facts, we get the right information, and we have the ability to vote for the people based on the facts, not on some twisted truth. One party has told us, and then because they are in power or they are not in power, then they decide to twist it.
Okay, you raised a very crucial point of no hearing, and that is something which is echoed in the judgment of Justice G.S. Patel of the Bombay High Court, who struck down the provision and said the exact same thing, that neither there are guidelines nor procedures for having a hearing, and for those who claim otherwise. Uh, what do you think can be the impact of such a problematic thing, if I can call it problematic?
I think you're rightly pointing out to Rule 16 of confidentiality, which is a different rules, not the IT rules. And but what we've seen in terms of secrecy is that, uh, and what is referred to the judgment also is that every time content is being taken down, there is now a secret communication between Métis and the companies. And then some companies will send a notification to the person whose content has been taken down. And they would just say, you know what, we got a request from the government and now we are taking your content down. And that is generally was supposed to be for the emergency powers of the executive to block access to information on digital platforms. But now we've expanded it to say whenever the government tells you to remove anything, then you're bound to do that. Because there are even open kind of warnings. Oh, we'll take away your safe harbor provision. Nobody takes away your safe harbor provision. I mean, it's a legal defense mechanism. But obviously, our courts are also not um, implementing or giving orders per what the law says. Here, what happens is that this rule was also challenged in the Shreya Singhal matter. And it's a very interesting thing. If you read that judgment, para 114 and 115, Justice Nariman says there is that, oh, you know what? Move to the High Court under Article 226 if you are aggrieved by such a thing. And because there are all these safeguards and people can go and challenge these things, then these rules are constitutional. Crucially, missing the point that if I'm never told that what is being taken down for what reason, what do I do? How do I go to High Court? I mean, going to High Court is not so easy for everyone. A. B, for certain posts to be taken down, unless I'm really influential, I have the money to afford it and I have the time. How is everybody going to be expected to move to courts for that? See, even if it is right, even if I do have the wherewithal to do it, SFLC provides free legal services to a lot of such people. We just have no way to know what happened. It just disappears. My content disappears, my account disappears, sometimes my handle disappears, and I have no idea. I'm at the mercy of the platforms who give me two lines. We received a notification from the government of India asking that your content had to be removed, and we have removed it. A lot of people these days, whether they influencers or other kind of people who run businesses, they do rely on social media for direct to customer marketing. They also, that's the livelihood. And that is also a question raised in this judgment about that if you rely on social media, if you rely on these platforms for your business needs, then any kind of such simple way, without any principles of natural justice, without giving you even an opportunity to explain yourself, then the government can decide, oh, no longer valid, we're taking down everything. It also violates the right to peaceful assembly. These days, that's the way we all communicate. That's the beauty of digital India, that a lot of people have started to use the platforms. Now, the government cannot say, oh, you know what? We can only allow you as long as we like all of these things. Otherwise, the kill switch is in our hand. Whenever we feel like you no longer can operate your business, you cannot march, you cannot speak, all of those reasons. So I think the secrecy built around content takedown, I think it is illegal. I think the constitutionality of that provision is pretty clear from the Shreya Singhal judgment, but it might require some clarification from the Supreme Court. Because if the court is saying that you can challenge something in 226, that means I'm entitled to an order. If I'm being deprived of my rights, the law says that you need to give me the reasoned order. Under what provisions did you deprive me of this? What did you exactly do here? And then I can challenge that order. Right now, it's everything happens in the background and nobody knows anything, and the narrative is shaped to the way government likes.
Okay. Just to counter that view, if I have to ask you, in this day and age when there is, as you rightly said, there is bombardment of information, disinformation, people using various platforms for various things, monetization. Uh, in this day and age, when there is so much information, and just for illustration, two or three fact-checking units, if the government comes up and says that, okay, here we are going to help you guys, and so what's the problem in that? I just coming from the perspective of so much disinformation, and just to tackle that, because there is a lot of also misleading claims made online. If I have to just ask you, if the government has this argument that we are going to,
Absolutely.
so what do you propose as a solution?
So, first thing I want to say is that what you have paraphrased is not what the government has done. They haven't said, let us come and help you.
Okay.
They have said, we have decided this is what the truth would be. I think that's a major problem.
Right.
When the government becomes the arbiter, not only the arbiter of truth, they have become the decision makers. This is the truth. We tell you. I think that's the problem. They haven't said, oh, let's work collaboratively, let's figure this out, and we'll work on it. The second thing is, I think there's a lot of big responsibility on the platforms for sure to have large trust and safety teams and also content moderation teams which actually follow the policies. The problem with a lot of these companies, whether it is Meta or others, they have very different standards. Today, I'm sitting in New York where my other law practices, and they sing the song of free speech and government will never touch anything. The Supreme Court here also last week heard arguments on something very similar, on two laws from different states, where the one of the Facebook spokesperson says, oh, the fact that even a government official can talk to us about something is a complete no-no. And it's so bad. And then they're really claiming. And I wanted to say, what a disingenuous claim here it is. Because you meet with Indian government officials every week, and you are very happy to take down content in India. And there goes your free speech arguments. Today is Thursday. On New York Stock Exchange, Reddit shares will be listed. Reddit was a cesspool of misinformation on the internet. What they rightly did was have very strong content moderation teams to really remove everything which they didn't think was complying with their policies. That's why they have survived. Not only survived, they're thriving now because they actually put effort in it. Many of these large platforms are totally disingenuous. There is a problem there. So what happens is people like us who are the consumers in India are stuck between a government which wants to push more of control. And it doesn't matter. This used to happen in UPA. This used to happen now with NDA. And each time what I have observed is that when the parties change and they are in the opposition, they somehow become really in favor of free speech, and then they change when they're in power. That's why we need the Supreme Court. That's why we need the constitutional principles. But to come back to that, the uh, the companies themselves are some people who only want to protect their bottom line. And we should recognize that. We cannot expect them to be fighting for our rights. Now, you and I are a user are stuck. We're like, if the government's not going to help us, and if the companies are not going to do anything about it, then what do I do? Which is the question you're rightly asking. And I think that's why we are pressing so hard to say that, Mr. Government, you are also bound by constitutional principles. And companies, you also have to stop pretending to sing one tune outside and really not doing anything inside. We've seen ample examples when companies themselves have acted in a partisan way. When they will do certain, they will not follow their own policies. When they will not remove half the things, they will remove certain things. And that does create problems because a lot of content should be removed, as you rightly pointed out. But we've seen a lot of hate speech floats there, a lot of stuff which is objectionable and illegal floats there, but a lot of other things, they're very quick to react. So this is a problem. It's not an easy one. And there are no easy answers to all of it. So I am going to say that the issue, that's why, is a hard problem. And to propose a simple thing like we are going to come and help you, they're not saying that. They're saying something very different. They're not, and India is not the only country going to elections. US is going to elections. US is rife with these problems. We're having a similar major issue in many other countries. And a collaborative way to say, all right, we are going to recognize 10 fact checkers and you can all rely on that. And we are going to work on that. That would be a very different thing from saying only one fact checking unit for government's business. Because the justification is, who knows better about government's business than us? Well, RTI knows better. And a lot of lawsuits as well as RTI information tells us that government is not always telling us everything. And if the expectation is that through Aadhaar, through various other information, the citizens have to be transparent to the government, then the government actually owes us much bigger duty to be transparent. They have no right to privacy. We have a right to privacy. They don't have a right to privacy because we pay taxes and we elect them to represent us. They are supposed to be absolutely transparent to us in every form, but we are not supposed to be transparent. And that's why I think your suggestion is much more useful than what is actually happening in fact.
Thank you, and see you again.
See you soon.
See you soon.